And Jack Kent Cooke, who owned the team at the time, put Chick Hearn, the basketball announcer, in charge of finding a hockey announcer. So I sent a tape and some material to Chick, and he called me back and said, "Oh, I got your material. I think it's really good. I'm going to recommend you for the job." Well, months went by, and it got into August. I hadn't heard a word. I called Chick, and he said, "Didn't anybody ever call you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, I recommended you, but here was the thing with Jack Kent Cooke. He was the epitome, in my opinion, of a hands-on owner. He wanted his hands in everything, which isn't wrong. He owns the team. But if he put you in charge of finding someone, when you came and said, 'Here's the guy I want, Bob Miller,' to show you he was boss, he'd pick somebody else. And that's what he did. And I had heard midway through the season, they may be looking around at the end of the year for somebody else. Sent more material to Chick, met him in Chicago, waited for 5 hours in the lobby of a hotel till the Lakers got in that night, introduced myself to him, and it lasted about 2 minutes, and he said, "I may have something for you." And about a month later called and said, "Come on out and let's talk about your contract." They rented a car for me, and they rented a car. It was a Plymouth Omega, which was a little small car, for $14.95 a day. And they said, "We're going to go to Bel Air to Mr. Cooke's house. If he asks you whose car that is, do not, under any circumstances, tell him we rented it for you. You tell him it's your car." And I thought, it's only $14.95 a day. It was probably my first indication I'm not going to get a lot of money here. So we drive up to Mr. Cooke's Bel Air mansion, and you pull in and the gates open up, and you park in a courtyard which is right outside his home office. And as we were sitting there, he looked into the courtyard and he said, "Whose little car is that?" And I said, "That's my car, Mr. Cooke." "What kind is it?" I said, "It's a Plymouth Omega." He said, "I like little cars. I have two myself, a Mercedes and a Maserati." And then right in front of me, he said to Larry Reagan, "How much are we paying this young man?" And Larry Reagan said, $22,000, and Cooke said, "My God, I told you $20,000.
I think Jake Milford was our general manager. And Jake told me, he says, "Lou," he says, Mr. Cooke, Jack Kent Cooke, he says, is very upset about all the hockey pucks. He wants you." "Me?" He said, "You, to count the pucks from here on in." I says, "You're kidding. I got to count the pucks?" He says, "Yep." He says, "You're the only one he can trust." I said, "Okay." So I did.
When we were in Victoria, he came to training camp in Victoria. We were staying at the Empress Hotel, and low man in the totem pole, 5 a.m. I had to go to his room and walk his dog, take his dog out for a walk. His dog was named Coco, a poodle, with a ribbon on and everything. And
when Mr. Cooke would arrive in the morning, we'd have a spy looking in the parking lot, and it was kind of like Paul Revere. He'd come running down the hall, "Mr. Cooke is here, Mr. Cooke is here."
And I'll tell you, you never talk to him unless he talked to you. That's one of the things you learn about Mr. Cooke.
Well, everybody was on pins and needles. They would announce at the forum when Mr. Cooke wanted to see you, they would put it on the PA system, and it would go out throughout the whole building. "Bob Miller, report to Mr. Cooke's office." And as you walk down the hall, people would be pointing and laughing, like you're going to the principal's office in grade school.
we came out with a memo once that said if you didn't answer the phone on the second ring, it could be subject to dismissal.
He was probably the toughest man I ever met.
And then Mr. Cooke would call you right during the broadcast. "You're not doing what I told you to do." I tell people I worked for Jack Kent Cooke for 6 years. The only reason I'm still around today, he was out of town for 4 of those years, and he was.